Welcome to this edition of the Ed Block CourageCast. I am back. I missed the show last week. Broke my heart to not be here with my guys. My thanks to our great videographer, Sean Glazer, for filling in admirably last week, I would say, listening to the show. DC did it. Wally and I were both off. DC, what'd you think of Sean? Does he make the rotation?
Young Killer came out kind of spicy, man. You know, it's like the one thing you don't have to worry about is like, you'll have to hold him back. You ain't got to get him to go. So he came out ready and willing, and it really was ready to put some stank on it.
I love that. But we're back. Wally Williams is back. Wally, it is great to see you, sir. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Good. Always good to be on, man. That means I'm not in meetings and devouring game plans for high school games during the latter part of the week like this. So I like this. I like this new night. Okay, night gives us all a chance to get together like this. So this is important.
This is big. This is big. Just so everybody knows, we are taping on a new night, which means a new time when the podcast will drop. So we're going to tape on Tuesdays. Podcast will be out Wednesday mornings. My camera is having problems, so this is going to be fun all night to deal with. But it's okay. And just so you guys know, in 2 weeks, this podcast is going to be able to be streamed live.
What?
That's right. In 2 weeks.
Yes.
Timer.
Yes.
You will be able to watch us on YouTube and on Twitter while the show is live.
So no pressure, right?
We get
no more
live
editing
opinions. You know what I'm saying, DC? Live opinions. Tune in.
So they're gonna be chiming in and trying to chop us up a little bit. Is that what we can expect?
We welcome all hecklers. We welcome everybody.
I love it.
You know,
I love it.
We enjoy that pace. Make us feel at home a little bit.
Okay. So we gotta get our tools ready, huh? Gotta sharpen our knives in case we gotta get a little witty with them.
Yes, we welcome that.
It is. And tonight, Fun Pod, we are going to dive into all things the rest of the NFC. We have 3 other divisions to talk about: the NFC North, the NFC South, and the NFC West we have to get to. Nick Carboni from WCNC in Charlotte is going to join us here in a couple minutes to talk about the Panthers. A lot to go on. It was cut day in the NFL. So before we get into the division previews, what was cut day always like for you guys? Wally, I'll start with you.
It was, celebratory because I never got cut. I kind of, left on my own terms, but you see the finality of the game. You see it resonates through, some of your teammates, players that you've gotten to know during camp. And, it's a catch-22, man. I mean, you make the team and it's jubilation, but you see guys' careers literally end. And it's somewhat heartbreaking is not the word because it's too much of an alpha male environment for that kind of word, but it makes you appreciate your job a lot more and just say that I'm going to be here as long as I possibly can. So, surprising some guys I saw getting cut, though. I'll say that. It's always surprising.
DC, what about for you?
I'm kind of like you, Wally. I've never went into a training camp and never even for 1 second thought I was getting cut. So I was fortunate to make it through 10 NFL training camps, and I was always either a starter or maybe a starter adjacent. But I don't know what it's like to go into camp and get cut and actually have to worry about my job. But, I mean, obviously I've been cut after the fact, maybe after the season a couple times. So I understand that pain and, the finality of moving on and changing cities and, having to uproot your family and the personal toil that takes on you. But, I do appreciate those guys. I remember I kind of stopped making friends with guys. I think by that second year, you kind of like you don't even make friends with anybody until like after the 53 man. Your rookie year, you kind of cool with everybody, but then it's so gut wrenching. You like, man, I can't go through this every year. So you start putting your walls up, like, man, I ain't kicking it with nobody who I know ain't a starter.
Right. And, for me, and having someone, and trust me, I understand exactly what DC talking about. Me being an undrafted guy and, having, like everybody around me at some point get released, outside of the main draft picks. I mean, these are guys that are still lifelong friends, but they didn't play, 10, 11 years that I had into the NFL. But and everybody has to move on a little bit quicker than expected. Even after retiring after that time, 10 years, you still have to move on and do something else. So everybody goes through that kind of hardship of losing their girlfriend. It's just a matter of when you lose her, because she's gonna fade away and go somewhere else, or eventually. You have to understand that.
Well, let's get into some of the fun stuff. We'll come back to this conversation because joining us now, he is on WCNC in Charlotte. He is kind enough to give us some time to talk all things Carolina Panthers, an interesting team in the NFC South. Nicholas Carboni. Nick, it is great to see you. You look very fancy. You're out dressing all of us right now. How you doing?
I'm good. Well, it's not by choice. I work obviously at a TV station, so I'm a couple hours away from a TV hit. But I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's interesting to hear the Panthers called interesting. We haven't had that in a long time, and we'll see if it actually is true this year.
Oh man,
That's a great question right there. So the question is it actually true? Okay, is it actually like we're posturing for the Panthers to get back into this championship posture from years ago, the homie days and all those things like that? So I mean, is this something that we need to get excited about with some of the young talent they brought in the last couple of years?
I think you need to see Bryce Young get off to a great start and start this season the way he finished last season, because he was, I wouldn't call it sensational at the end of last season, but he was really strong. He built himself into, a top half of the league quarterback if you look at that sample size over those last 8 games. Certainly not over the first year and a quarter of his career, but he found some confidence. Dave Canales, his head coach, made that massive decision to bench him. The number 1 pick the year prior, he gets him for 2 games and he benches him. I mean, that's almost unprecedented. It may be unprecedented. So to answer your question, I think he's definitely got to start this season the way he finished last season. And then I think you can start looking at the Panthers and being like, okay, they're interesting. If you have Sunday ticket, you're like, okay, what are the Panthers doing today? And the longer that lasts into the season, the better for Carolina. I don't think they're going to be a 12-5 team. I don't think they're going to be or if they win the division, they're going to have to kind of sneak their way into that spot. This is year 2 of head coach Dave Canales and GM Dan Morgan, and they're approaching it with their acquisitions, their trades, their free agent signings as year 2. They're not trying to skip steps, but they want this thing to build a little further. So a great start for Bryce Young makes this team pretty interesting, at least at the beginning of 2025.
Nicholas, what else do you guys have around Bryce Young to support his ascension, so to speak?
Well, the Panthers made for a really interesting draft night because they were picking 8th and everybody thought they were going defense. And there was a kid in their backyard who lives in North Carolina in the Charlotte area, and Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker. We had a camera fixed on his draft party. I mean, one of those deals where we thought he was coming here and he picked up the phone and shook his head. And then the Panthers went with receiver Tetairo McMillan when they clearly needed defense. They had historically bad defense, but it all goes into helping Bryce Young become that franchise quarterback, because if he can do that and the Panthers have their guy, then they can really take off to where they want to go. So Tetairo McMillan was their number 1 draft pick this year, tall receiver out of Arizona, kind of sure-handed, really make sure he catches the ball with his hands out of the air. He's shown really good strides in training camp this year. I think he'll definitely be a top contributor. They have Xavier Legette, who they traded up for last year, who, he had a lot of drops, but he was open, but now he's got to hang on to the ball. So I think, he can take a step forward. But the Panthers really want to rely on the run game, and they know that's what sets up Bryce Young the most for success. They had a 1,000-yard rusher last year in Chuba Hubbard. They brought in another one from Dallas in Rico Dowdle. And I called some people in Dallas. I was like, 1 year, $6 million. Dallas didn't want that. After the year he had, is something wrong? Is something up? And they said, no, we're not really sure what Jerry's doing with that, as we've seen play out with other situations. But, I think they like what they have around Bryce Young. And most importantly, as you guys know, it starts up front. And this team brings back all 5 starters across last year's offensive line. It had to be the most improved offensive line in the NFL last year. And not only do they bring back all 5 of those starters, they bring back the same 3 or 4 depth guys behind them. That's where it's going to start for Bryce Young.
Is it fair to say, though, Nick, that maybe some of the optimism with Carolina and with the Panthers is partially because they're playing in the NFC South?
Yeah, if they were pick most other divisions, you wouldn't be saying after a 2-15 season and then a 5-12 season, oh yeah, we could see this team winning the division. It's absolutely fair to say that because, the Saints may be back to the Aints. The Falcons and the Panthers, based on the season finale last year, I think they're going to be clashing a lot in the next few years to kind of climb the ladder in the division. And the Bucs are still there. And until somebody knocks them off or they take a step down, it is their division. But yeah, if they were in, I'm trying to think of it. Most other divisions, you're not sitting here like, okay, they could go from 3rd to 1st fairly easily if a few things go their way.
Now, Dan Morgan is the GM there, and that's a guy who actually played against a couple times when he was a Carolina Panther back during his early playing days when he came out of Miami. The philosophy that, we talk a lot about, defense, because that was actually one of the keys where you thought he was going to go, going into the offseason and going into the draft. So speak on that, because, we have a defensive guy up there running the show, and that's not going to be an anemic area in Carolina. Matter of fact, it's always been kind of the foundation of the Panthers ever since its existence is its defense. So talk about that plan and how you foreshadow, that kind of involvement this season.
Yeah, that's a great question, Wally. When Dan Morgan was hired at his opening press conference, when he started talking about the days where it was hell to come play the Panthers at Bank of America Stadium, you saw the linebacker look in his eyes, which you probably saw, and he's really intense about it. But I think that he has been very pragmatic with his approach, and he is trying to get the quarterback situation right and coalesced around Bryce Young. He's trying to build from the obviously the inside and out in both offensive lines. And really their first opportunity to do that was last year, and they plugged in 2 really big, beefy guards in Damian Williams and Rob Hunt and paid him a whole bunch of money, and that has absolutely helped. Hunt was a Pro Bowler. Damian absolutely could have been as well. He's just kind of a quieter guy, and it was a bad team. But they both really played at a Pro Bowl level. Now they just extended their right tackle, Taylor Moton. They picked up the 5th-year option on left tackle Ike Ekwonu. He may get extended this year. And then this offseason, they focus more on the D-line. Derek Brown only played 1 game last year. He was a record-setting defensive tackle the year before, plays a little outside in the 3-4 as well. He's back. That's almost like a free agent acquisition. They tried to get the Milton Williams guy who ended up in New England. Couldn't get him. Price was too high. They pivot. They get Turk Wharton, who played alongside Chris Jones in Kansas City, had 6.5 sacks. They add a couple of other pieces. They drafted, didn't go defense in the first round, drafted 2 all-SEC first-team edge rushers in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. So you can see it in both off seasons, O-line first, D-line second, and then build out from there. But yeah, like when you're thinking about who Dan Morgan is, he absolutely had to be grinding his teeth watching one of the worst defenses in NFL history last season, give up 30 points plus a game. But he saw the approach based on what was out there as best to fix the O-line first, help my quarterback take the jump, and now he's focused on the defense. But like I said, it's just year 2. It's going to take a couple off seasons to really build it how he wants to build it defensively. They may have to score a lot of points this year to win 7 or 8 games.
So, Nicholas, we know Tampa Bay has dominated your division. If you're looking at what you guys have done, unit by unit, where have you guys moved ahead of Tampa Bay?
Oof. I guess the offensive line right now, it's the first thing that comes to mind. I know Wirfs, I think he passed his physical today, so even that's a tough sell for me. But I think the Panthers' offensive line and running back group, now that you have Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, I think you could probably look at that and say they could be a little ahead of Tampa Bay, but the other spots, like I'm not putting Bryce Young over Baker Mayfield yet. The receiver group hasn't proven anything yet compared to what they have in Tampa. Now they just drafted Ibuka, who looks really, really good. I'd go linebacker, but the Panthers linebacker room is thin. Maybe cornerback. I think maybe cornerback. J.C. Horn coming off a Pro Bowl season. Mike Jackson, a guy they picked up about this time a year ago, has turned himself into a very good starter. And they've got some really younger guys in the corner, outside corner and nickel positions that they like. So, there's not one that just jumps out and said, yeah, that's the one right there. But those are ones that I think the Panthers have improved. And, we'll see if that gives them the edge over Tampa this year.
And the uniforms, man. Don't forget about the uniforms, man. The powder blue uniforms. Okay.
And they got the all blacks too now. They can wear the all blacks. Everybody loves those.
The coldest combination in NFL. I don't care. You know what? I take it back. Outside of the Bengals, the ice, the all white joints. Yeah. Okay. Those are pretty hot. But the Black Panthers, they best uniforms in the NFL. I don't care.
People here love them. People here absolutely love those combos, and they usually win in them. So they probably like to wear them more than they're allowed to.
So, Nick, I wanted to ask, as we've kind of been talking about comparing this Panthers team to Tampa, what's the ceiling and sort of the floor that you see for Carolina this year?
Yeah, and, speaking realistically and not getting wrapped up in, like, the fact that I'm in Charlotte and people are excited, because how many cities in the NFL aren't excited right now? I mean, I would say the floor is probably 4 or 5 wins. And that's what they had last year. And, if things don't break right and people get injured and Bryce Young doesn't start the way he finished, that's what you're going to be looking at. I think the ceiling is probably 9 wins. 9 and 8 here that stadium would be rocking. There were a couple games last year when it was rocking at 5 wins towards the end. Mm-hmm. And even that guard I talked about, Rob Hunt, told us, we haven't done bleep, and everybody was excited. So I think a 9-win season here would be phenomenal. That's just kind of where Carolina's been the last, better part of the last decade.
Well, Nick, one more thing before we go out, man. I don't know if it was cut day today. All right, and a lot of guys, some other guys on other teams that somewhat surprised me. Anybody on that roster surprise you that was released by the Panthers today? And then moving forward, do you think that the roster that they are putting together, the 53-man, is that going to be a roster that can maintain, the length of the season, depth, all those things like that, is going to be ready to go ready to compete?
I'm glad you brought up that second part, because that's the part people don't realize after that deadline hits is they're not done. They're watching. So I'll answer that part first. Last year, Dan Morgan, I think, signed 6 guys after cut deadlines. They're absolutely going to be active in that department, especially when it comes to that defense. I don't think they're in love with the linebacker room as it stands right now. Josie Jewell, who was one of the team's best linebackers last year, he hasn't retired yet, but he had to basically leave the day before training camp due to concussion. That is lingering from last year. So the linebacker room is really thin. The safety spot is really thin. Like, all their safeties walked in the offseason. They brought in Trayvon Merrick from the Raiders, who they really like. Drafted a guy in the 4th round, Lathan Ransom, who they really like, but isn't a starter yet. So I think they're probably scouring that waiver wire for those linebackers and those safeties right now. In terms of the surprise cut, not too surprising around here, because we're dialed into it every day. But, it's like one of those things when I post about it, one of my buddies across the country texts me, why did they release Hunter Renfrow? I thought he was going to be back to Pro Bowl Hunter Renfrow. Well, He had an amazing first part of camp. He sat out last year. He had a really, really serious illness, and he was working a 9-to-5. Comes back this spring with Carolina, had an amazing week and a half of camp, hamstring injury. And he didn't really practice for a good week and a half. And then the other night, he was playing with the 3s and the 4s. And as you guys know, best ability is availability. He just did not have it for a while, and they really like their other receivers. I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up back here. I'm not sure how many other places he wants to go. He's from here. I think he really took a liking to being home when he was working that 9 to 5 in South Carolina. So that's the one that grabbed headlines around the country, like this great comeback story. Oh my God, he looks like he did when he went to the Pro Bowl. Boom, he's cut.
Did I hear this Adam Thielen possible trade thing going to the
Yeah.
Bears?
So,
What was
well,
discussed
the
with that?
Vikings. Yeah,
The
there's a
Vikings, yeah,
lot of
the
chatter.
Vikings.
Yeah, a lot of chatter about Thielen going back to the Vikings. I mean, he's a Minnesota guy, played, not even Division I football in Minnesota, was a longtime Viking. Here's the situation with that. Minnesota needs a player like Adam Thielen right now because Jordan Addison is out 3 weeks. And they have another injury too. The Panthers do not need to trade Adam Thielen. He's their leading receiver the last 2 years. Bryce Young loves to throw it to him. He's reliable. And all those other receivers that they haven't done it for a whole season like Adam Thielen has. So when you're in a position where you don't need to trade somebody and somebody needs you to trade that person to them, you can sit there and squeeze. And I think that's what's happening. They're saying, okay, listen, here's what the compensation would have to be for us to do this right before the season. The Broncos traded Devon Vele, receiver, 400-yard receiver last year to the Saints for a 4th-round pick. If I'm the Panthers and I don't have to trade Adam Thielen, I'm starting with 2nd round. And I just don't think the Vikings are going to be comfortable doing that. So ultimately, I don't think it will happen because I think the Vikings will have some other options. KJ Osborne, another former Vikings receiver, I believe got cut or is on the trade block anyway. So I don't think Adam Thielen will go back to Minnesota until he retires or if he signs a 1-year deal there next year.
All right, Nick. Well, we appreciate the time. We know you probably got to get ready for TV hits here as you're all dressed up and fancy. So thank you for taking some time with us.
I appreciate y'all. It was awesome.
Thank you, Nick.
You got
Thank you. Yeah, man.
So as we transition here and we talk the rest of this NFC South, after hearing about the Panthers, where does Carolina to you guys stack up in the NFC South?
Well, I think it's a weak division, so I mean, I feel like they can be 2 to 3, just because New Orleans basically is completely, they don't know what they're going to have at quarterback, and really Tampa's the only real strong competition. I think outside of, I think Carolina can kind of worm their way possibly into that 2nd spot, maybe 3rd.
Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, it was very awkward for Nick to say, that about the defensive side of the ball, and and that being kind of a initial, not afterthought, but and that's the question about Dan being the general manager and how those guys feel and what they have. And he basically said, "Look, we got to score a lot of points offensively." You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
It is a wide open, somewhat division right now, and look, the Bucks seem like they are, head and shoulders above everybody else as being a real contender, but everybody else has a shot. The Saints have a shot to becoming 2nd. Maybe the Bucks is the only team in that division that goes to the playoffs. Okay, and everybody else is under 500. I can see that happening, just as much. So, any one of those 3, Atlanta, I think Atlanta is a step ahead. I think they are. But other than that, I see them 3rd, if not last.
I was going to say, I think the ceiling for Carolina is 2nd. I think it just comes down to the consistency play factor between Michael Penix or Bryce Young. Who's more consistent? If it's Bryce Young, then Carolina can be the 2nd best team in that division because they are pound for pound. I think in Atlanta's class, they're better than where I think the Saints are right now because the Saints realistically, and we'll talk about them a little bit more here in a second, but the Saints are sort of in that point where they understand they've needed a rebuild, and now they are at the precipice of a rebuild. But if you're Carolina, you look at yourself and you say, probably not in Tampa's class. Tampa Bay is going to be a very fun pick. We'll talk about them in a moment. I think Carolina sits in that 2-3 range. And to me, it just comes down to the consistency at quarterback for Bryce Young compared to the quarterback of Michael Penix. Whichever one has a more consistent year, that's the second best team in the NFC South.
Well, no, let me ask this question then. It's like, okay, they may finish second. They could finish third. But if second in the NFC South is 7-10.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
It's a
what
low
I'm
bar.
talking about. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, the Saints can be 5-11. Okay, I can see that happening with those guys very easily. So,
Are the
second.
Saints even motivated to win the division? I mean,
I,
they're
I,
lined up for their destination with Archie Manning. So I mean,
I,
why would they try to kick their ball on the winning side of things?
hey, that's a good. Hey, the prognosticators are prognosticators. Duane Clemons.
On paper, it looks real good for them to be like, real low, get that high pick, start all over for real with a legacy.
Well, I think it's I look at the Saints, and I don't even necessarily know if technically they are tanking for Arch Manning as much as it's you've just been in salary cap hell for so long. The roster got old. Guys that you were counting on, the Michael Thomases of the world, weren't able to stay healthy. You're in that transition into a rebuild. It's just not going to happen. Even in the NFC South, it's just not going to happen for them. No offense to Spencer Rattler or Tyler Schlug, who they drafted in the second round. Like, they're not going to get the Saints where the Saints need to go. The offensive line's not good. I mean, the offensive line has lost so many guys like Ryan Ramczyk, Andres Pete. Those guys are all gone. They're going to be a couple years away from competing in that NFC South.
There you go. Yeah, I agree.
But here's what I will say. If you talk about the NFC South, you want to talk about the team that could be the threat. Tampa Bay, I think, is getting overlooked in the NFC totality because you have the Eagles, you have the Lions, you have the Commanders, the Packers. Don't sleep on Tampa Bay. The defense is still good under Todd Bowles. The wide receiver room with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then you add Emmanuel Ibuka. That is one hell of a three-receiver trifecta. And the biggest thing that Tampa Bay hadn't really had is they now have that run game of Bucky Irving. They are going to be tough. If they stay healthy, they are a dark horse Super Bowl team, in my opinion.
So you think they can move past the Rams in San Francisco and kind of round out that close top, being in that bottom top five?
They can definitely move past San Fran. I really believe they can. Now, look,
I don't look at San Fran as a sure thing this year, to be totally honest.
I don't
they
at
got
all.
an easy schedule. They got an easy schedule.
But let me ask this question now. Not to try and totally transition, but I don't look at San Francisco and say they're the clear-cut second best team in that division.
No, not at all.
I think Arizona's as good as them. I don't even think you can not talk about Seattle in that boat. So there's nothing necessarily to me that guarantees that San Francisco minus Deebo Samuel and an injured Brandon Ayuk is anything to talk about in terms of the playoffs. They have the pedigree, they have the ability to be, but I'm not. I can convince myself they're the fourth best team in that NFC West right now.
Easy. And am I mistaken? But I believe Baker Mayfield had a career year last year and was
Baker's had. I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, he was considered like an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah, MVP number.
I think they're already ahead of the Rams. They have less questions than the Rams right now. So to me, I would still put those four teams I mentioned ahead of them. Minnesota probably in that tier with them and the Rams. But they're a dark horse, but they have to stay healthy. If they get injuries, particularly to a Mike Evans or Chris Godwin or on that defense, they're going to be in some trouble. They can still win the NFC South. I still think they will win the NFC South. But they're a dark horse Super Bowl team because they've gone toe-to-toe with the top dogs and given them games or have beaten them in the past. Now I think this is the best roster that has competed against them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's transition. Let's go to the NFC North. We just touched on them a little bit. Lions have kind of run that division, but the Lions lost both their coordinators. DC's Vikings let Sam Darnold go. J.J. McCarthy's coming in. You have all the questions in Green Bay with Jordan Love. And, oh, by the way, the Chicago Bears have Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, and your two, Caleb Williams. DC, this is your division you played in. What do you make of the NFC North as a whole, and how do you look at your Vikings?
Well, it's definitely a very competitive division. Obviously with Green Bay, I think they're strong. I think you obviously have Detroit, who's the favorite, and Vikings probably right there in between Detroit and Green Bay. But then you got to watch out for Chicago because now they got, a lot of pieces together that, traditionally they haven't had a good offensive head coach, a good quarterback situation. And, they beefed up some of that offensive line. And, it's still to be seen whether they can like execute the offense, and it might take a year or two. But for some reason, Caleb Williams is able to kind of jump the learning curve and really come out and execute that offense to a high degree. They could be a very dangerous team. So I think that could be a bloodbath division where all three of those teams are within 2 or 3 games of each other coming down the stretch. But I'm gonna believe in the Skull Kingdom and believe my Vikings can pull it off and finish the year out on top, even with a kind of an unknown at quarterback. And then I'm going to put Detroit second, and then I'm going to, let Chicago probably be at the bottom and Green Bay at third.
You can let that ride because that damn jersey and that helmet is sitting right above your head up there. So we can let that ride. We get it. I mean, I get it. That's an interesting, conference to me. It's interesting because it's a lot of wait and sees. It's a lot of hypothetical situations. It's a lot of, well, the Bears, is this going to work out, with the quarterback and everything advancing and him growing, and get new head coach, is it's like Duane was saying, is this thing going to work out in Minnesota? We know what Donald did last year. I mean, we know what he did, but can J.J. McCarthy come in and repeat that and move the offense in that same direction? I mean, hell, they were 14-2 last year, wasn't they?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? Are we expecting that kind of, performance out of J.J. McCarthy? We know that the Detroit Lions have a potent offense. Everybody in their offense, for the most part, their key guys, they have performed and they have done well. And even the Packers. I mean, is Jordan Love, is he going to be healthy to start at the season? And, we know, we don't know actually what receiver is going to take over. We know they have a bunch of them. And we don't know what is going to be, their head guy in the backfield. I mean, they haven't really recovered from losing Josh Johnson. So, I mean, I'm going to have to go with, the Lions because I've seen them perform and I've seen their key guys, make plays. And it really doesn't matter what I think because, see, Dave Steinwedel there jumped on his Lions bandwagon, years ago. So the main question is does he still have the same confidence and the same tenacity, with these Detroit Lions when he jumped on the bandwagon, all right, when Mark Campbell got the job? That's what I want to know. We can record that back. We can find that episode and record it back when you jumped on the bandwagon and say they were winning a Super Bowl.
Did he roar?
To answer that question, no. I have zero confidence in any of the teams that I would pick in this division. Because as you mentioned, some of the questions, you look at the Lions. You don't have Ben Johnson, who it revolutionized that line offense, revitalized Jared Goff's career. Aaron Glenn, not talked about. Now he's a head coach of the Jets. What does that do for the defense? That's a whole new staff. And eventually you start to lose some guys because good teams, that's the penalty they face. You have the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love, great numbers, big arm, but they come up short. The offensive line hasn't been great. What about this young wide receiver room that they just keep adding to?
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody's eventually got to step up there. You have that defense that's young, has a lot of questions. Chicago, Caleb Williams, I think, started to show flashes. Now, what does it look like with Ben Johnson? I don't know if there's enough confidence for any of us to say the Bears are above any of the top three teams. But then you look at the top three teams and you say, well, I don't know. Like, I could talk myself into Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to be hurt because of all the injuries at receiver early on, and particularly for a young quarterback, but you have Aaron Jones, so can you get by for 3 games potentially with Aaron Jones? I don't know. The defense is still pretty good. I mean, I'm going to take the Lions because, like you said, Wally, they are the most proven team in that division. We've seen them have success and sustainability, but they're not absolved of questions, and it could go south because you lose both coordinators in one season. That's a hell of a transition you have to make. You guys know this as you played with coordinator changes. That changes a lot of things, and it takes time. And the problem is you're playing in a division where you don't have that affordability of time because you have 2 other teams that could potentially pass you. So did I answer?
Like where your head's at.
To answer your question, Wally?
Yes. That's it. I'm in that space, man. I'm just, I'm with you, but I just don't hear that same vigor that I, heard, years ago when.
Was he playing Kid Rock in the background?
Hey, he put all his chips on the table, man.
I did. And I'm still here doing this show, so it didn't work out. I'm kidding, Brett. Don't worry. If you're listening to this, I will still do the pod even if I make it big, rich, and famous. Don't worry. Let's talk about the NFC West, and then we'll do our standing predictions and get out of here. We touched on it a little bit. San Francisco, they've got a lot of questions. They go out and get Brian Robinson. They trade away Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk is hurt. You have the Rams, which felt like sort of in that Buccaneers, hey, they're a dark horse, but now we got all the questions about Matt Stafford and his back and what that's going to look like. They let Cooper Kupp go. Cooper Kupp is now a member of the Seattle Seahawks, but they also had Devontae Adams. Seattle trades Geno Smith. They now have Sam Darnold in that offense. And then you have the Arizona Cardinals. So, Wally, what do you make of the wild NFC West?
Well, I mean, can we trust Sam Darnold in Seattle? Was that an anomaly that we saw last year in Minnesota? I mean, can we trust that same kind of production in Seattle? I don't think the receiving core is as add up as he had in Minnesota. We will see about that and see how these guys, work together. But Seattle, we know that Kenny Walker, we know they can run the ball. Okay, we know they have some things there. Their offensive line got better. They took some bumps and bruises last year, but they got better as the season progressed. And, like defense, Seattle, okay, hand in hand. But are they good enough to topple the Rams, even with Matt Stafford coming in with this back injury thing, which, look, he's in his 17th year, man. Take the camp off and just be ready to play the first game. No big deal. The stuff is just news. Just be ready to go. I think the Rams are right now the lead in that division. I mean, hell, they made the NFC Championship game last year. Okay, and they could have beat Philly. They had Philly on the ropes last year in the NFC Championship game. So, look, I think they're the lead right now. The 49ers, man, Ricky Purcell and George Kittle. I mean, these are our main guys. You got McCaffrey to them, but McCaffrey is hurt too often. You can't count on him. You guys used him last year in fantasy football. Y'all lost all y'all money last year on him. Okay, I don't care what you were pissed because he was drafted like top 5, okay, top 2 maybe. You lost everything on him last year. I'm not betting the house on McCaffrey. I'm not drafting him at all. Okay, he's not going to mess up my draft, man. He's not dependable. So I just don't see them rebounding and kind of regaining that Super Bowl form. I know they have a system there, but I think the Rams are the team that beat in the West. Arizona, I don't trust Arizona until Arizona showed me they can win more than 5 games consistently. I can't trust that what they do out there. It's too nice out there or something. I don't know. But I can't trust the Cardinals. They're a janky team like the Bengals. Okay, I can't trust those guys. So we'll see what the Cardinals do, but count on the Rams being a solid team to come out of that division.
I'm following a lot of what you're saying, Wally. I definitely believe the Rams are the team to beat. Obviously, I think Stafford is going to be the linchpin to that if he can stay healthy and actually be in a good place by the postseason. Like that long season gets real long by the time December and January come around. So even if he is, 95% of what he is, I think as long as he's somewhere in 90 to 95%, then they have a chance to win it all. I don't believe in, I feel like San Francisco, they have such a good system. I don't feel like it's all about the players that they lost. They just have a great system, and somehow, no matter who the players are, they find a way to plug and play and get more out of the guys that they got. So even though they don't have the household names, I think they're going to be second place. I agree. Arizona, there's nothing about Arizona that just makes me feel like they're going to be a team that's competitive for it all. I feel like they made some minor moves, but I don't see anywhere where they've stepped forward in a major way that team's gonna be a factor in January. Plus, we already know anytime you live in an extreme environment, it's hard to go play in November and December and win games on the road, which I don't see them going on and doing. And then obviously, who's that leave us? Who am I forgetting?
Seattle.
Okay. So then Seattle's kind of an anomaly. I don't necessarily. I don't think Sam Darnold can do what he did without Justin Jeffries. I mean, I think when you have a dynamic receiver, it's almost like having Randy Moss. There's certain things you could just do when you got a guy and it just works out. I don't know if he can go up to Seattle and just do that kind of thing and it's just going to work out for him because he's got a guy that's so much better than everybody else out there on the field for him. So I think he's probably going to take a step back, and they'll just be a middle of the pack team somewhere, third or fourth in that division, with Arizona.
I'm actually going Rams are 1. The Stafford thing is very concerning now. Mm-hmm. That the back injury, that's something that I just feel like is going to linger for Stafford. I actually have Seattle 2 because I really do think we saw Sam Darnold take a step forward in his career last year. I know how it ended, and everybody's going to have that recency bias, but if you look at objectively how those games went, that wasn't all on Sam Darnold down the stretch. That was a lot. Some of that was play calling and game planning was not where it needed to be for the Vikings down the stretch. That caught up with them. I think they're the second best team. I just think San Francisco is just so limited right now because of the injuries and too many questions on both sides of the ball for me to have confidence to say they're the second best team. But I have them third, and I have Arizona fourth. Because like you guys said, it's hard to trust that Arizona team until you've seen Arizona do it consistently.
Yeah, you don't know if Harrison Jr. is going to show up or not. It's a lot of names. Tight end McBride there. He's very high on fantasy football. He's the new Travis Kelce of fantasy football as far as tight ends go. But is this a team on the rise? I think it's a team that remains somewhat stagnant. They've been like that for quite some time now with a lot of expectations really since Kyler Murray has gotten there to be their quarterback.
Do you look at their quarterback and just say, man, there's just nothing about this dude that just says he's there and he's gonna command a championship effort.
Look. You know how this thing. I'm gonna say this, and I'm glad you said ask that question because I've been sitting on this for quite some time, and I don't. The league changes and players evolve and situations evolve, but I remember vividly when the NFL would never ever think about drafting a quarterback that's 5'7".
Right.
I mean, this is still the league and how things go. And I know that Kyler was a tremendous athlete coming out of college, and I mean, hell, what can you say? He gets drafted first round in 2 damn leagues, baseball
Right.
and football. I'm not knocking that, okay, but just the logistics of somebody 5'7" playing quarterback in the NFL. You know how cold of an athlete you got to be, and eventually, again, Doug Flutie was shunned upon when he came out of college. Absolutely not. Go to the CFL. Okay.
Right.
You know, I just don't see it working out. I didn't see the thing. I didn't see it working out with Tua, which I don't think that he's shown anything to get the contract that he has gotten other than being drafted high. I just don't think that works. I think when Tua came out, it should have been Herbert before him. He's more of an NFL style quarterback, just like May. And the little quarterbacks don't work out unless you have a tremendous football IQ. And we've only seen that really happen with Drew Brees. Everybody else has been, pretty much the standard.
I mean, it's hard to see over those guys. 5'7". I couldn't imagine standing behind these guys at 5'7".
I can't imagine standing behind guys at 6'2". And I look like a dwarf standing in the lineup behind these guys or with these guys I played with. So, yeah, I just don't see it working out. A tremendous athlete, but you might want to go back and play baseball and rethink that.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's edition of the Ed Block CourageCast. We have finished our training camp previews. Our thanks to Nicholas Carboni of WCNC in Charlotte. New show, new time, same great Ed Block CourageCast. And again, a lot of new things. After Labor Day, 2 weeks, you will be able to watch this show live on Twitter and on YouTube. We're going to build that up. We're going to have something special planned for that one. We're going to have a new segment coming up here too, guys, by the way.
Exciting.
We're going to end the pod so everybody knows, so you can get a head start on this. We're going to end every pod with a new segment called Locker Room Talk. We've all been in locker rooms. We all played at one point or another. It's going to be life advice. It's going to be comment on just things we see in be culture. And we're just going to discuss it. It can be anything within realistic possibility that doesn't get us canceled or fired. But if you have questions, you want to hear stories from playing days of Wally and DC, you want to ask relationship advice, whatever it is, we'll give you ways to reach out to us. We'll answer your questions on this podcast as we head into another football season. I'm so excited for what we have planned for you. I think DC and Wally are excited about what we have down the pipe.
Hey,
absolutely.
You're gonna go down you open up some
rabbit holes,
spaces, okay? Asking us locker room questions and stuff like that. And see, the thing about it is that this is what people don't understand. That me and DC don't mind answering the questions. So give us your best shot.
Let's do it.
Now remember, the locker room is the last masculine space that still exists.
Correct.
At least I think it still exists. I'm not in the locker room literally anymore. The locker room I remember was a masculine space that was safe.
Correct.
So I hope this is still a safe space for us to be masculine men.
Masculine.
That's what I want to be.
You know what I'm saying?
I want that to be okay.
That has to be okay.
All right. For Wally Williams for DC,
Respect
I'm Dave
me
Steinwedel.
for me.
This has been the Ed Block CourageCast. Have a great week. Happy Labor Day to everybody. We'll talk to you after Labor Day.